participants online. We'll wait 1 to 2 more minutes for the last people to trickle in, and then we'll get started. Okay, welcome everybody. I hope you had a wonderful lunch for those joining us here in person in Rome and those in similar time zones online. It's a pleasure to host you here today. We're in the Philippines room at the beautiful FAO building. In the next 75 minutes, we'll talk about how to operationalize private sector investments in the transformation of the agri and food system. And we're happy to have with us today representatives from both the public and private sector, right? As makes sense when you discuss this, we can't do it through either one side alone. We'll have a total of 75 minutes for this. The plan is that we'll spend about 45 minutes or so in a panel discussion with the panelists that I'll introduce to you in a second. And after that, there'll be ample time for Q&A from the participants, both here in the room and online. So hopefully that'll get a chance for you to either contribute or get your questions in and get more detail from the very broad range and level of experience that we have in the room today. So let's talk about that for a second. We have with us today, and I'm very proud to be able to announce this, and for our panelists online, allow me to go around the room first, and then we'll get to you. First, sitting next to me is Rajesh Singh from Africa Improved Foods in Rwanda. He's the Procurement and Sustainability Director, and AIF, as it's commonly known, has played quite a key role in the country of Rwanda in working on both fortified foods as well as the overall food system. So pleasure to have him with us today, and he'll be able to talk in a lot more detail about that. From the Japanese government, we're very happy to have with us Mr. Fuminori Aihara, who is the Director for International Agriculture Organizations at the International Strategy Division of the Ministry of Ag. I need to say the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, although we on a day-to-day basis just know that as MAF, right? And it's been a key partner to IFAD. Well, the Japanese government has been a key partner to IFAD for as long as we remember. In particular, I mean years, right, since our establishment, really. Recently, we've engaged in some other more specific activities, and we'll come to talk about that as well. For that reason, we're extra happy to have Aihara-san with us today in person. And then, excitingly, we have a South African entrepreneur with us today, Ms. Wendy Vaselan-Timbani, who will both tell us a little bit about her enterprise, and also will help us understand the various aspects that come up when you try as an entrepreneur in the agri space to be part of that, right, of progress, of evolution, and of the transformation, really, of food systems, right, to get nutrition and food out to the people that most need it. Wendy is South African, right? But also has obviously views and experience in other places in Africa as well. So it'll be very interesting to learn more from her. Now, as we have a representative from the Japanese government online, we also have representatives of the French government, which is another key partner to IFAD. I wouldn't even know how to quantify that exactly, but again, from the very establishment of IFAD, the French have played a key role, both in helping IFAD conduct its work and fulfill its mission, as well as through various initiatives and always aligned and strategically sort of providing input and helping us do our work. We have with us online Antoine Bergerot. He's the head of the unit for multilateral financing for development and climate as part of the French Treasury. I'm not sure whether we can get him in image right now, but you'll get a chance to see him and listen to him as we have our discussion. Then we also have two representatives from the private sector in Japan. The first one, Mr. Nakahira, Naomi Nakahira, is the general manager of Agri Research of the Agri Research Center of the Yushima Coffee Company. This may not be that well known for Europeans or people outside of Japan, but UCC, as it's known, is one of the largest coffee companies in Japan. Is consumer facing, so is a retail organization as well. Every Japanese person will know UCC and will have undoubtedly drunk some of their products. And they'll talk to us a little bit about sourcing from places like Tanzania and what that means. Now, together with UCC, we have Marubeni. You may know that name. It's a very, very large general trading company in a whole number of different commodities. With us, we have Kasai Ichihari from Marubeni, and he'll tell us about the work that they do, specifically on the ground as well, and sourcing products from very diverse locations. And feeding those into the various value chains and supply chains that we'll come to talk about. So those are the participants to today's panel. I'll close the opening remarks by saying that we'll try and build our panel discussion a little bit around a first segment where we talk about the various challenges of bringing the private sector and the public sector together, or maybe you could say bringing the private sector into the food system transformation topic. And then in the second part of it, we'll look at ways that people have made that work. Right, so the solutions that are there, the projects that people have started with, and the various initiatives, both at the public and the private sector level in both of those cases. Okay, so when I get the nod from my general manager who takes care of everything, including time, etc., we'll get started. Hopefully most of the talking will not be done by me today, but I will give a general context setting. It will not have escaped anyone that we are, in the last year in particular or so, we're in an environment of sharply decreasing budgets for official development assistance. Right? Traditional aid is being questioned. People have less money for it. Geopolitical developments have caused people to redirect money, all of which puts pressure on the traditional way that we do development work and provide development aid. Partly as a response to that, and partly as a movement that had been taking shape for a while already, people are increasingly looking at the engagement of the private sector in development funding, but also in innovation and other topics, right? And the logic, I think, comes down to about 4 key areas of why the private sector can and should play a key role in development. And then in particular in agricultural development, right? First off, the private sector, by conservative estimates, constitutes about 90% of global agri and food systems, right? Just based on money flows, value created, etc. The public sector is important, but it is nowhere near the size of the private sector. So if we want to talk seriously about transforming that, you need to work with the people that are in it. You can't transform it from the outside. The private sector also brings, and this is something that people have been focused on a lot recently, also brings its own investments, right? When you create the right incentives and the right mechanisms, the private sector will invest in its future, obviously. That's what they've always done, right? So bringing investments, private investments, to help, right, and to align with development initiatives to help transform the food systems is obviously something that we're all hoping for and that we're all counting on going forward. One thing that's sometimes forgotten is that whether we like it or not, and I can say it because I am part of the public sector, but in the public sector we're not great at innovating, right? We're very good at providing, at creating systems, at setting the rules, providing incentives, but we're not always great at finding new ways of doing things. And frankly, the challenges that we're facing today are probably big enough that you will need some kind of innovation, some kind of new technology in many cases, right, in order to effectively deal with and address those challenges, right? And for that alone, we would need the private sector as a key player, because I don't think we can do it with just, right, as smart as people are, right, but the heads in the public sector. And finally, and this is a truth and an observation that I think has been around for a while already, when you include companies in a development, in an agricultural project, those companies will then start forming transactional and even longer term relationships with the farmers, the smallholders, and the people that you try and work with. When those relationships are built, they last, right? Because there's an interest from both parties to continue those. That means that the sustainability of those projects work beyond just the project itself. The typical problem of as soon as you take the project and the funding away, things kind of collapse back to the previous state. We see that a lot less when the private sector is actively involved, for the simple reason that those transactional relationships are now set up and they are kept and they're maintained because of the joint interest of both parties in those relationships, right? So sustainability is key. Okay, now then, that's enough for me. I want to start inviting some of our panelists in order to provide us with some views and information about how they see things and how, from their role and their organization, they look at the topic of bringing the private sector into the transformation of agri and food systems. I wanted to start off, if you'll allow me, by Antoine Bergerot, who is with us online. And the question to him is, in particular, looking at the France-Africa Summit that will happen next year, and France's role as the president of the G7, of the upcoming G7. How does France look at the obstacles for the private sector to act as a key driver to scale action in agri-food systems, right? And then putting that also in the context of the declining aid budgets that we're seeing in the world. So Antoine, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rick. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to you all. Very happy to be with you today. And thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss this this very interesting topic. I think going back to your background document, I think I mean, France strongly supports the initiatives that turn private sector engagement from theory into practice. I think this is key. You know, last week I was in DC, and this was front and center during the annual meetings at the World Bank. We share, I think, the same diagnosis. So ODA is shrinking. Development needs are rising, and not only around food security. So it's a matter of job creation. It's a matter of value chain development, you know, as well as connectivity between the local, the regional, the export markets. Info systems, like in any other sector, you've mentioned that, Rick, already. Private sector is by far the main actor. It brings so mobilizing its resources alongside the public ones is essential to scale up impact. it also brings the unique know-how, the capacity to innovate, as you mentioned, and also it ensures that the projects they are embedded in long-term business models that last beyond short-term aid cycles. At the same time, I would say what is specific about the agriculture sector also is that it concentrates many of the constraints that we face in development finance more broadly. Dispersed producers, price volatility, climate and land risks. And so I think this is why we need to be very smart about how we want to use the concessional finance in that space, not to replace private capital, but to unlock it. And so as a catalyst. So just quickly, we see four complementary levers there. There's no silver bullet. I think it's a continuum of actions. One, and I won't develop. I can come back to that in the Q&A. But I think one is creating the enabling environment. The standards, the governance, the capacity building. I think is as vital as funding. Second is investing in the critical infrastructures, the logistics, the energy, etc. Third is expanding access to finance, and you can take it from the seed funding to the de-risking instruments for SMEs and bigger players to make agri businesses bankable. And fourth is partnerships. So partnerships within the projects, building the strong sectoral value chain ecosystems. Also partnerships with governments and local authorities to have ownership and that long-term anchoring of the initiatives. And third is partnership amongst donors themselves. So through the coordination, and I think what we've seen last week with the AgriConnect launch at the World Bank is an example.
It looks like we've got a slight hiccup in the connection. Because on my screen, at least, Antoine is very intently looking at his desk, but not moving a whole lot. I was going to say we'll give it a few seconds, but while we do this, what we can do, of course, is maybe use the time and come back to Antoine, of course, but switch over to the other public sector representative that we have with us today, Mr. Aihara, and ask him to comment on this from the Japanese perspective, right? So, Mr. Aihara, for instance, right, at the recent TICAD 9 event, right, celebrating the relationship between Japan and Africa, Japan positioned itself as a partner in sustainable global value chains. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you see as the biggest challenges to be overcome, right, in making this more of an operational vision with the private sector and small-scale farmers.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity today, inviting us today for this very good event. And as mentioned and Rick mentioned, Japan is going to actively contribute to this matter. The matter means the good global value chains. So in this context, Japan and IFAD have launched an initiative at the G7 Agriculture Ministers meeting, which was held in 2023. And also in TICAD 9, we showcased this initiative last August. And ELPS, which I mentioned just now, is an acronym of Enhanced Linkages Between Private Sector. And ELPS is a platform initiative for matching local farmers and private companies. In ELPS, involvement of the quality of products, productivity is expected outcome of farmers' side. And also securing value chain is for private company side. So we link the farmers and also the private sectors. That's a key. Link, bridge is a key for this initiative. As Rick mentioned, the private, public sector cannot do by ourselves everything. No, we cannot do everything. Innovation, technologies are in private sectors. We don't have that, the technologies in our side. And also, we have some budget and we do some interventions with the budget, but it doesn't last longer. If the farmers and private sectors can want to live longer and survive longer with the good outcomes, the private sector's involvement is necessary. So that's why we launched the ELPS initiative a couple of years ago. And that's a key. And also, we have UCC and Marubeni-san today from online. And we already launched 2 projects in Tanzania, which is a coffee project, and also in Rwanda, which is macadamia nuts project. And we have just started those 2 projects, but we have learned a lot of things from those 2 projects. So maybe later from UCC and Marubeni, we're going to have some example of how we can deliver from the partnership between the private sectors and the farmers. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Okay, so those are, we have Antoine Beck as well, I see it. Antoine, we used the time that you needed to presumably reconnect to switch to our Japanese representatives as well. I want to ask you to finish your story that got interrupted by the connection. Go ahead.
I'm very sorry for that. So yeah, I was almost finished. I was just going to mention that under our next year's presidency of the G7, we intend to work on a joint platform on mobilizing private finance for development. And the idea here would be to take stock of what works, encourage scale up of the most, let's say, effective pilots, and align to the extent possible MDBs, DFIs, other actors and donor instruments around the relevant risk appetite, the relevant innovative instruments for risk sharing, and also shared principles for catalytic concessionality to change scale in terms of private finance mobilization. And before that, there will be indeed a Africa France Summit next May in Nairobi, and there will also be it will also provide a key moment for us to advance these discussions and also to showcase concrete win-win partnerships in that space. So I can stop there. Sorry again for the disruption.
No problem, and thanks so much, Antoine. Okay, good. So that was some inputs from the public sector. Let's now go and switch to the private sector and see how they look at this. I wanted to ask Mr. Nakahira first from UCC, who's with us online. And maybe can you please comment a little bit on the following? So Japan is the largest buyer of Tanzanian coffee, right, as a country. So in your experience, what are the biggest challenges in engaging with the smallholder farmers that you buy from in other countries, right? And then, of course, in particular in Tanzania.
Hello, I'm Naomi Nakahira from UCC. Thank you for joining us today. I will now answer your question. So I'd like to ask Ichihara-san to translate. Say Japanese, okay?
So thank you. And I'm Ichihara from Marubeni, and I will translate into English.
タンザニアコーヒーの現在の課題としましては、コーヒーは近い将来、温暖化の影響で収穫量が大幅に減少すると言われており、コーヒーの需給バランスは大きく崩れ、めったに飲めない貴重なものになってしまう可能性を秘めています。
So coffee is predicted to see a significant decline in harvest yields in near future due to global warming. And this could drastically disrupt the supply-demand balance and potentially turning coffee into a rare luxury item rarely consumed.
UCC の調達戦略上、重要な国の一つであるタンザニアのアラビカコーヒーの生産量、単収は年々減少傾向にありますが、その原因は貧困と最新の情報へのアクセスが困難という状況になることです。
And Tanzania is one of the countries critical to UCC's procurement strategy. The productivity of Tanzania coffee has been declining annually, primarily due to poverty and limited access to latest information.
裏を返せば、適切な支援により生産性の改善が十分に見込め、サプライチェーンの強化につながる。本プロジェクトは途上国の小規模生産者支援がベースにあり、エルプスの資金と民間企業の技術を集結することで、生産効率が良く、環境負荷の少ない農業を普及させ、農家の生計向上を助け、将来のコーヒー不足に対抗する、ウィンウィンの、ビジネスを構築するモデルケースになると考えています。
And conversely, this means productivity improvements are highly achievable with appropriate support and leading to a strengthened supply chain. And this project is fundamentally based on supporting small producers in developing countries. And by combining ELP's funding with private sector technology, it aims to promote efficient and low environmental impact farming practices and improve farmers' livelihoods and build a win-win business model to counter future coffee shortages. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So I believe in Japan they call this the coffee 2050 problem, right? For those not familiar with it, the idea that because of global climate change, coffee is almost literally pushed up the mountain, right? Because coffee needs a certain temperature range, and as it gets warmer, that needs to be found up the mountain. But the way that mountains are shaped, that means that you have less and less surface area available for your coffee farms, right? And that means that we're under almost continuous pressure, upward pressure, literally, on the mountains. To try and find ways and try and find surface area where coffee can be grown in those right temperature zones. Thank you very much for that. I want to invite my neighbor in this panel, Mr. Rajesh Singh. Rajesh, please tell us a little bit about AIF, because I imagine that perhaps not everybody is intimately familiar with the business. And then, as you've done this, maybe tell us a little bit about the difference between the short term and the long term in business and in partnerships, right? In your supply chain and really in business in general. How do you see the differences between the short term and the long term approach? And obviously assuming that a long term approach tends to be more beneficial for everyone, what can we do to help create more of those long term collaborations?
Yeah. Thank you, Rick. And my panelists, and I also want to thank IFAD and CFS for this opportunity. So before I start, I just want to say, I heard Mr. Antoine say a few 4 levers. I saw around enabling environment, partnership, and investing. And Mr. Ahira said about farmer and cooperative linkage. So I just thought that I think AIF has implemented like a good student everything which can be done in this space. So Africa Improved Food, just to give you some background, is a Africa Food Champion with impact at its mission. We are a PPP with DSM Feminish, IFC, FMO and Government of Rwanda. So our focus is on production of affordable, nutritious, high quality cereal, fortified cereal, which essentially goes into the nutritional program for WFP and Government of Rwanda. So what we are trying to tackle is malnutrition, and we want to source most of the products which we use for manufacturing locally, so which helps us in reducing poverty, creating job and tackling malnutrition. So coming back to the question Rick asked, long-term versus short-term. So I think for every partnership to survive, there has to be a short-term goal and a long-term goal. Short-term goals could be about building that confidence, because wherever I have worked with Africa Improved Foods or OLAM earlier, I have seen that we start with small steps. So how we partner with farmers and cooperatives and build a relationship with them of confidence and provide that strong linkage of offtake at a certain decent price. And that is how you are able to focus on short-term goal. Because once you focus, I think short-term sometimes is misunderstood as only profit, which is not the right terminology, but we have to invest in that short term to survive, and then move on to the long term, which is like fostering long-term collaboration, which is built through transparent communication, aligned goals, and certain investment and targets. So that is how you will go about doing. And if you look at AIF, what AIF has done. So firstly, we had this DSM Feminish had a long-term goal that they want to provide nutritious food to Africa, and that is why they went about building this partnership with Government of Rwanda. So there was a long-term vision where we want to reduce malnutrition and have healthy population which can be very productive. And then when we moved to setting up a plant in Rwanda, there was adequate infrastructure which was there, but then when we realized that we wanted to source maize and soybean locally, we were not able to source this adequately. So what we did was we built up the infrastructure with the long term in mind. So where we invested with cooperatives, along with IFAD, along with IDH, RVO, we built the capacity for the farmer cooperative and set up an integrated supply chain, where we are ready to pay some premiums for the crop which we are sourcing. But what we wanted them to say, they should have adequate income so that they have interest in growing this crop and take it for the long term. And that is how we balance short term and long term for a effective delivery of aligned goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajesh. Switching back to the online participants, I wanted to ask Mr. Ichihara from Marubeni, a large global trading company. So if, let's assume for a moment that you had available some government support, right? Some subsidies, some financing maybe. The question is, what types of investments in your supply chain would you make, right? And which problems would you address if you had that support with you, right? Problems either in your own or perhaps in the countries where you source from. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm Casey Chihara from Marubeni Corporation. And Marubeni Corporation is a trading company, and not only coffee, but has a lot of commodities. And Marubeni's, our mission is to ensure a stable coffee supply from production areas to consumption area. And so in this question, let me only mention about Tanzania because there are a lot of coffee production area, but let me only just reply for Tanzanian coffee. If we receive the support, we as Marubeni plans to implement 2 ways to strengthen the supply chain. And first, we will distribute seedlings of new improved varieties to increase production. Tanzania has many old varieties, which are said to yield only half as much as new varieties, so only half production compared to the new one. Furthermore, with coffee future pricing right now is raising. And coffee is a major source of income supporting producers' livelihoods. Distributing seedlings benefits both producers and consumers. And second, we will establish a washing station to produce high-quality coffee. While this ELPIS project installs a drying bed is like a bed for drying the coffee. And this time, we want to establish a washing station. And washing station are equally important. And by processing coffee at well-equipped washing station, we aim to deliver high-quality coffee to consumers and fulfill Marubeni's mission of ensuring stable coffee supply. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Also in the room, as we said before, we have an entrepreneur that is running a somewhat smaller firm, but oftentimes those are the most exciting, given the innovation and the new ideas that they bring along. Wendy, as founder of Matomani, maybe tell us a little bit about your enterprise, right? Because you talked to me before it and I got very excited, so I want to share that with the room. And then on top of that, of course, also on the topic, right? How do you see, right? And what lessons have you learned already in your entrepreneurship about the role of the private sector in agri-food transformation?
Thank you, Rick. And also special thanks to the IAFN for the opportunity to be sitting in this very room. Yes, my name is Wendy, and I founded a company called Matomani. Matomani, what it translates to in my native language, it means Mopani caterpillars, or widely known as Mopani worms. What is a Mopani caterpillar? Mopani caterpillar is a superfood. It comes with 60% natural and organic protein. So I'm going to repeat that. It comes with 60% natural and organic protein. It's almost as 3 times higher than beef. It's higher than the insect, the black soldier flies, which is average 60%. Coming back to the Mopani caterpillar, it's very high in iron and it's also very high in fiber. So the region that I come from in South Africa, I come from a province called Limpopo province. So in the region that I come from, we are blessed with the natural resource. We've got a tree that is called Mopani tree. And the Mopani tree is the food for the caterpillar. So the Mopani caterpillar comes from an emperor moth. And what the caterpillar eats the leaves of the Mopani tree. So the caterpillar is vegan. So it's a very nutritious ingredient in our local area. And I'm just going to also mention, like in the discussion that I had with Rick earlier on with regards to nutrition. In the indigenous or native area where I come from, there hasn't been a history of malnutrition because of the Mopani caterpillar. Our foremothers and forefathers will tell you that when you someone, and in this time I will say a child, looks like it's malnutrition, all you need to do was you take that caterpillar and then you mill it, which the olden way was through grinding the stones, you mill it and then you put it, mix it with the porridge, and your child will be healthy. So yes, because I was born in that region and Mopani caterpillars haven't been commercialized, so traveling around nationally in South Africa and the world, you struggle to get hold of this amazing superfood. So I decided that, I'm going to launch a company that is going to bring this amazing superfood nationally, make it available as well as globally. Those that are looking for an alternative source of protein that is natural, that is organic, that is harvested by local rural communities are the ones that we are targeting. And yes, what we've done with it is that we've milled the Mopani worms, which comes from the ancient way of how our foremothers used to do it. We mill it, we package it. It's a protein. We don't add any additives into the food for those that are looking for a natural organic type of a product. And from there we do different products which are on your commercial space. We do protein energy bars, we do biscuits and other products as well. So that's who Matomani is about. And coming back to the question at hand, as an entrepreneur in the agri-food, which I'm one of many, one of the biggest barriers that we face, we come up with innovative products. However, one of the biggest challenges we're going to face is access to market. I think, Rick, you mentioned it, in a sense of, there are initiatives that are implemented, but you find that they are not sustainable. And where the solution comes in is to say, when we include the rural communities, when we include smallholder farmers, when we include people that are working on the ground and ensure that the product that they are working with has market, that will create sustainability, bridge the gap between small farmers as well as big farmers. So the second challenge, obviously, everyone knows this, the finance and access to resource. And for us at Matomani, one of the biggest ones that we face is that in some market, our product is not recognized as food. Yes, it's not recognized as food. We have to come up with studies as to, this is food, and what those are some of the challenges that we are working to solve and to prove that it is food. It's been, consumed for many, many generations to come. So key lessons into concluding. So the first lesson will be start locally, identify challenges in your area and come up with a solution. And more than likely, you might find that you might scale that particular solution globally. And then second thing is to build partnerships. The challenges that we have as a small business entrepreneurs can be bridged with the partners and collaboration that we have. And lastly, obviously, is keeping the community at the center of the impact. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Wendy. She'll be available after the session for one-to-one advice and more information, I'm sure, about Matomani and the wonderful work they're doing. Okay, we've looked at some of the challenges and we've had inputs, right, from our panelists. As promised, let's switch, or let's talk a little bit about the various solutions and models as well that we see coming up as a response to how to integrate all these sides into food system transformation. Wanted to switch online to Antoine with a very simple question, right? So what are the specific models that France right now is promoting to drive private sector investments in development? Antoine?
Yes, thank you very much. Quick answers. One on the multilateral side, one on the bilateral side. I think on the multilateral side, I would like to quote, Farm P3, which is hosted at IFAD. This is an initiative that we launched under the FARM initiative to try to operationalize exactly that public-private partnership in food systems. We've had so far 4 pilot projects, one in Rwanda, one in Senegal, one in Sierra Leone, one in Zimbabwe. And we are testing scalable models, linking smallholder farmers to processors, to buyers, I think with this logic of partnerships, equipping them with training, with tools, supporting SMEs, and facilitating those multi-stakeholder platforms. And I think this initiative is exactly first. So it's showcasing the small local pilots that can then be replicated, also emulated, I think, and mainstreamed into, for instance, IFAD's own approach to private sector operations, and that logic of partnerships, of building partnerships. The second one I would like to mention is basically the same one, but in our bilateral toolbox, I would say. So it's really mirroring Farm P3. It's called Farm Private Sector. And it's more about mobilizing risk-sharing tools. So probably at a larger scale through Proparco, so our DFI, and BPI France, our national development bank. And the idea here again is to it's mostly to focus on access to finance, I would say. So, and it really ranges from seed funding to startups, with some technical assistance to make them bankable, make them investable. Some de-risking finance through intermediaries. And I think there the key lesson learned is how to engage microfinance, not only banks and bigger institutions. And I think the last component is direct loans to larger SMEs to scale up. And here again, the idea is to reach scale, and also to bring our own DFIs and agencies to the first mile, to the smaller tickets, the smaller projects, the smaller settings, the more complex settings, to still deliver meaningful impact. So I think the common DNA between the two initiatives is this concessionality for leverage, making every euro of public de-risking crowding private capital, crowding technology, crowding know-how. So these are, I think, concrete, small steps, but concrete steps. And I think the next 2 years will be key to take them to scale. And that's what we, among other things, want to discuss in the convening, in the venues that I've mentioned earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Antoine. I noticed we're running a little bit late as to our original planning, but we'll do our very best to make sure that everybody gets a say, and of course we have plenty of time for Q&A from the audience as well. Back to the government of Japan, with a simple question, really. Based on your experiences, I mean, overall experience with IFAD, but then in particular, right, through the more recent ALPS initiative, what lessons would you share? What tips would you have for, around bringing in the private sector?
So I'd like to share some lessons we learned from ALPS initiative. The first one is as I mentioned earlier, the key element of the partnership in ALPS is literally it's a linkage between private sector and small-scale farmers. In other words, first, the private sector has a need for procurement of sustainable foods because Japan is a net importing country, so we need to procure foods from other countries. while often we don't have effective networks to reach out on actual producers in developing country. It is very difficult for Japanese private companies to have a network in developing countries where many products are produced. So this is a critical risk in doing their business. That is one. And secondly, the local producers have a need to produce food sustainably in a way that is acceptable to buyers and to bring more products to domestic and international markets. But unfortunately, they do not have technologies and know-hows to make this happen. So, the first lesson we learned is that if we could link these two needs, it would be possible to solve the problems we face. That is the first lesson we learned. You know, maybe matomani powder may not be acceptable to Japanese farmers, but you know, nobody knows. This is, in my understanding, that it's very good for malnutrition improvement. So in future, nobody knows. You know, but I'm not joking. You know, such kind of traditional knowledge could be, could be same as the technologies. So I think it's technologies. So that kind of technologies we can use and we can link together with the farmer's need. And the second lesson is that it is also important to have good partners who are familiar with the agriculture situation in developing countries. And in ALPS, IFAD was a very good partner for us, for the Ministry of Agriculture of Japan, and also the private companies such as UCC and Marubeni Corporation, because IFAD is it's a financial institutions which is focused on agricultural sectors, and IFAD has a very good network with the farmers in developing countries, and that is very good for us as a partner. So, and one of the success in ALPS initiative is that we had a very good partners like IFAD. And certain lessons we learned is that is not the one which is specific to ALPS initiative. Last month, I attended another roundtable which took place in New York. It was very high-ranking roundtable, so I was so strained. But many attendees in that roundtable were saying the same things. They were saying, I want to introduce some keywords which I heard in that roundtable. Many participants in that New York roundtable, high-ranking roundtable, was repeatedly pointing out that appropriately cope with severe situation, multi-sectoral cooperation, including private sector, is a must, using such keyword as to avoid fragmentation and collaboration and aggregation, which I think means that bringing together some idea and financing system and such is very important in this situation we face. Doing projects separately in a separate idea is not working anymore. I understand someone saying that the ODA budget is shrinking. And also the problem in global context is getting worse and worse. But if many people get together and do one thing together, which I think makes better outcome, which is my idea. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nayahara-san. Okay, let's switch to the online participants, in particular the room where UCC and Marubeni, or Kaisei and Naomi, have gotten together. Maybe I'd like to suggest that we join the questions, the separate questions to you, as they're quite similar anyway. The question is, and feel free between yourselves to answer those, right? How has the initiative, the ALPS initiative, helped you overcome these challenges? And to what degree can these be copied into other regions or maybe even other crops, right, from Marubeni? How do you see that as a possibility for the future? Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we believe this approach enables impactful support for small producers. This project addresses an area where private companies may not engage from short-term profit perspective. By implementing support through ALPS project, we can solve social issues through business. And there are 3 specific support areas. And first is composting, fertilizer methods. And second is drying bed and installation. And third is the seedling bed installation. Seedling beds means the nursery. And they are for composting, like fertilizer methods, the ALPS project provides raw materials and teach the producers how to make the fertilizer. And compared to conventional chemical fertilizer, this compost offers equivalent effectiveness at half of the cost. So it is cheaper than the chemical fertilizer. And we believe the ALPS project helped producers understand the ease of using this compost. And the second one, the drying bed installation. We have installed a total is 215 beds were set up across 2 AMCOs. And here AMCOs is like a cooperative, and each producer in Tanzania is a member of this cooperative. And drying beds are crucial for potential drying the coffee after processing. So it is very important. And without these drying beds, coffee might dry on the ground, and it can lead to a moldy taste, something like a defects. So these drying beds enable the production of high quality coffee. And the third one is installing the seedling beds, like a nursery. And these beds ensure seedlings grow healthy. And in this way, without this ALPS project, it would have been difficult to provide large-scale support to producers and overcome this challenge they face. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. That brings us back to the room. Being also conscious of time, I think I'd like for you, Rajesh, if you're okay with that, to focus maybe on the first question that we shared with you as preparation for this, which is the lasting value that's created through these partnerships for both you as well as for the farmers.
See, my take on this is that food system cycle starts from the grower. So just to give you example, when we started our factory in Rwanda, we did not get maize which was low in aflatoxin, and we had to import some of these maize. So what we did is we invested in infrastructure, we invested in warehouse, we invested in sheller, we invested in dryers, so that we could buy maize on cob, which was very innovative model, and shell and dry it within 24 to 48 hours. That way we were able to arrest the aflatoxin buildup. So what we say, there has to be primary handling, processing, and making food accessible and affordable. So that was the thought around that, and that way we are able to build in resilient food system. So our idea, like the project which we are doing, Farm P3 with IFAD, is that we should have year-long relationship. So we are able to participate in maize and soybean. We have engagement with the farmers so that we are able to improve yield and income, provide them with livelihood and security. And what are we doing? We are giving an off-taker guarantee that we will be able to buy whatever they produce at a right price, along with building capacity for these farmers. And in a way also, in this inclusive business model, we are also addressing certain new agendas like crop diversification, soil conservation, biodiversity, and how to reduce the impact of the climate on food and food security. So I think some of these things which we are doing right on ground along with our partners, we are able to not only address some short-term goals, but also a long-term relationship with farmers and cooperatives.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And then finally, from our inspiring entrepreneur in the room, and just before we go to the Q&A, as mentioned, we're running a bit over time, but we do want to make sure we give the audience a chance to ask questions. Maybe a few tips from your now road of experience in taking this forward, Wendy, and from building up Matomani. What would you advise people looking at similar initiatives or having bright ideas and wanting to take this as part of the transformation of global food systems?
Okay, thank you, Rick. I think the advice that I have for people is create value and ensure that everyone, in your value chain, gets to benefit. And that's a model that we have applied, at Matomani to ensure that the smallholder rural communities get to benefit from the work that we are doing. They are our partners, and also the end consumer gets to benefit. So the most important thing also is to make sure that you involved everyone within the supply chain.
Wonderful, and thank you also for keeping it nice and crisp. That helps us in time management. Okay, I want to invite both people online and people in the room. Many of you have microphones floating around near you. We also have a roving microphone that we can share with those people that aren't close to a microphone. But let's open up for questions, and please, when you do ask a question, please briefly present yourself and tell us who you'd most like to answer the question as well. Yep, over there, lady in the back.
My name is Thank you. My question goes to our speaker from Japan. Sorry, I can't articulate the name very well, but any of the speakers can attend to this question. And this is a question: we find that the private sector plays a critical role in food systems transformation if they align their business practices with responsible business conduct principles. I want to know, apart from providing reliable markets for the farmers, the coffee farmers that you talked about, what else are you doing to ensure decent livelihoods for these smallholder farmers? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I represent Tetra Pak. We also work with linking smallholder farmers to our dairy customers. So I was very interested to hear about this Japanese facility. So the question is for Mr. Aihari. The examples we heard here are Japanese companies procuring products from smallholders in African countries. Would you also be prepared to work with a local, that would be our case, a local dairy company procuring milk from local farmers, or any other value chains or any other situations, or are you limited to working only with Japanese companies initiating these projects? We have a very good support from our development aid organization, SIDA, and obviously they work a lot with Swedish companies because we know about their program called Public-Private Development Partnerships, but they are not limited to that. So we would be very happy to look at, of course, alternative partners. So what about Japan?
Well, those are two questions directly addressed to you, Ayala-san, so maybe this is a good moment to...
Focusing on Japan.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Okay, so for the first question, so what else we're doing in Tanzania in ELPS initiative? So the way of partnership we do in ELPS is that, like this. Maybe someone else has already explained this, but in my words, and I will explain it again. So, for example, so in ELPS initiative, IFRED installed seedling beds for coffee trees. And UCC corporation provides technical training for farmers, and farmers learn how to raise seedlings. And IFAD procures feedstocks for organic fertilizers, and UCC provides technical guidance for farmers to learn how to make fertilizer. That is a kind of partnership. And monitoring and reporting was being done by Marubeni Corporation. And the project management is done by IFRED. And the ministry is doing funding, which is very important part of the project. And that's our partnership, what we are doing in Tanzania. Am I answering to your question?
Yeah, what more else are you doing with them to ensure decent livelihoods of these farmers, to make sure that these farmers are not left behind? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think one of the answers to your question is that, we are not doing for Japan only. We are not doing this project not only for Japan and Japanese companies, but for farmers, so that the improvement of livelihood for Tanzania farmers is, well, I would say the most important things to think about when we are doing this project, so that the need of farmers to take the farmer's need is the most important things for us to do to do our project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As an extra resource, I just quickly want to point out Mr. Shingo Futami. If you can raise your hand, Shingo. He's the coordinator of the ALPS initiative within IFAD. So if you have any detailed questions, or if you'd like to follow up, feel free to approach him. He's here, and he'll be here until the end of the session, right? So he can provide some detail as well. To the Tetra Pak question, this is not just for Japanese companies. Understandably, the initiative started out with some Japanese companies, right? Just as SIDA would naturally kind of start out with some Swedish companies, but it is not limited to that. So there are those opportunities as well. Again, Shingo can provide you more information if you want. I think we had a few more questions, right? Yeah, over here as well. Oh, yeah. Maybe get a few more questions, and then you address this as I'm sure questions will come your way as well.
Thank you. My name is Ben Harasep. I'm from Namibia. I have a question for Wendy. Wendy, in terms of sustainability, when it comes to harvesting, specifically the agroecological aspect of Mopani worms, what do you specifically do to make sure that it's sustainably harvested? Then the second question is in terms of the product being regarded as not food globally. When it comes to your marketing strategy, if you look at in terms of the countries that are close to your countries that consume Mopani, what is the uptake in terms of your product in those countries? Thank you.
This is, it's a little bit aside, but maybe you, yeah. My name is Eva Knudsen. I work for Norwegian Church Aid, so we're in the sister with the Dan Church Aid. It's a little bit inspired by the same thing. I heard Antoine Bagerot, you mentioned kind of 4 important things, and one of them were partnerships. And you were talking about partnerships with private sector, obviously, but also with donor-to-donor partnerships. I wanted to also ask you how you work with civil society organizations, or if you do, and both to ensure initiatives so that they stay community-centered, as also was mentioned by Wendy, but also to ensure there is space in the value chain. And we have experience, or in our experience, that partnership can also act as a de-risker for private sector, for crowding in private sector funds. So I was curious to hear more about you or either of the panelists, how you work with that. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, and I'm glad that you've asked that question because what has happened over the years is that the population of the Mopani caterpillar has declined, and that is a result of a number of reasons. One is the growing population, growing demand of the product, and then another one is because of the rural communities cutting the Mopani tree for the different uses that they have, such as fire. What we have done with the Mopani project, and still a working in progress, and we still have a long way to go, is that we educate the community members in terms of the value of a Mopani that they have. So we have this local resource right on the ground, right on our land, and what are the benefits. Until Matomani was established, the local communities, the value that they derived out of it was obviously own consumption. And yes, there has, as I mentioned earlier on, that you can buy Mopani caterpillars in informal settlement. However, that whole chain was at a disadvantage to the local harvesters. So what we're doing is that educating them to look after the tree. We started an initiative this year that we donate a Mopani tree. It's never been done before, so what we do, we take the seeds and then we look after. So it's a nursery for the Mopani trees, and then we donate it and bring it to the local communities, and we say, you can partner with us, we'll come back, and then we will procure the product, which will be the Mopani caterpillars, from you. So because we've been doing this for 4 years, we've seen an increasing uptake in terms of looking after the environment and people starting to value the tree. That is the sustainability that we have been working on, to say, let's grow the population of the Mopani worms. Regarding the marketing strategy, in the neighboring countries. The focus has been, at this point in time, South Africa. However, we do export to Australia, and we do get requests. The EU, we got requests from different countries. However, we cannot export to the EU at this point in time because Mopani caterpillars, it has not yet been listed as a novel food, and it's a project that we've been working on for the past 18 months. So we can talk after. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. As we're over time, some people obviously have other obligations, as does Rajesh, but I did want to ask him to comment briefly on the situation around dairy that you wanted to add on for one of the previous questions.
Yeah, okay. Just to add quickly, like there was question about, like as AIF, we usually focus on traceability, code of conduct. We don't do any certification. It adds only to the cost and not direct benefit. And our approach is not corporate social responsibility and move towards sustainability. So one of the examples which I want to give, and coming to the point you were raising about dairy exports, see, cost of production in Africa is very high, and logistic cost and transportation costs are also. So to compete with Europe, Americas, Australia's, where it is subsidized, it is very difficult. So what we say is produce local, use local, because if you want to also import, it is also costly. So one of the transitions which we have done, especially on dairy sector, is that government of Rwanda has put up a skim milk powder plant, and where they are trying to promote dairy industry. They have collaborated with from free grazing. Now they want to increase the productivity of milk in Rwanda, and Mr. Aira mentioned that. So we have a tie-ups. In our product which we make, we use at least 8 to 10% of SMP, which we were importing from Europe. Now we have a buyback agreement and assured offtake from them that we will source everything locally for our own production. And with that in mind, and of course, anything produced in Africa always have this concept that what about quality? So just to give you a perspective, the product which we make in Africa is certified by World Food Program, and it is among the first factory in Africa where we don't need external certification, because we have our in-house lab. Our manufacturing process has been audited multiple times by WFP. So in that sense, we are trying to onboard this client also in Nyange, which is producer of SMP, and get them certified as a supplier for SMP so that we can buy locally from them and use in our products. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rajesh, and thank you for your participation and your contributions. Amy, I think you wanted to bring us online, and we have Antoine as well, right, with a question
on partnership. Maybe we can take Antoine and then go online. Thank you.
Rick,
Okay, quickly,
I haven't answered the question, the second question from that lady. Just show.
It's exclusive for Japanese companies.
Oh, yeah. Domestic market, local procurement. We are not looking, so we are not limited to the export and international market. We are also looking at the domestic market. Thank you.
Antoine, over to you.
Yeah, no, quickly on the two. So I have two questions, one on community-centered, one on de-risking, let's say, the private sector. So, I mean, on the second one, this is the whole purpose, right? So we come in, we try to bring an additionality. So that means if we get it right, we don't crowd out the private sector. It does not substitute. It simply creates market, creates linkages that would not have happened in absence of the intervention. So I think this is something we have in mind every time we deploy such initiatives. But it's true that it needs to be carefully, let's say, designed. So that we make sure we are always additional and bringing value and enabling change. On the first question on how do we let's say involve CSOs or communities, I think so. 2 points. One is we see inclusiveness as an enabler for impact. So I think when we say that these initiatives help us bring our agencies closer to the ground and to smaller tickets, smaller initiatives, etc., this is by let's say by definition enabling more involvement of communities in the projects that we fund. And I think the second element is that we operate through partners with partners. We have an advisory committee, and these partners are IFAD, are African Development Bank, etc. And I think all those partners have their own, let's say, policies to involve to have a fruitful dialogue with CSOs, etc. So this is a very important element of our engagement, and we think we are in the right place.
Very well.
Thank
We
you,
have
Antoine.
some online questions you were
Yes,
saying?
can I just come in for one comment, if I may? So my name is Eme Korganski, and I'm the technical coordinator of the Farm P3 initiative. So to complement what Antoine has just mentioned and to discuss the partnership question. So for instance, with Farm P3, what we've tried to do is really, in each case, identify what are the high opportunities in terms of investments in local value chains where you can bring additional private sector engagement. And once we have identified our key value chains, let's say maize and soya in Rwanda, we try to map out what is being done already in the field. And then we started from that. So with AIF, what we did is that there was a very good collaboration between IDH and AIF. So IDH, which is a Dutch foundation, let's say. And so they already, in the past, did a project on how to link AIF with maize farmers. And so what we did is that we really look at this example, this best practice, and actually we duplicated it for soybean. So that was one example. And then still in Rwanda, for instance, we are closely working with WFP, because WFP has done this farmer to market alliance, where they bring off-takers, buyers, and then the smaller farmers. It's basically platforms for market platforms. And so instead of just recreating something from scratch, what we do is that we sit down with them and we see how to, all of those new farmers, the IFAD farmers, how we can onboard them in the existing scheme. So that's the case of Rwanda. We also have the case of Zimbabwe, where, for instance, we are working on mechanization, and we have CIMIT, which is another development, let's say, agency that has done lots of work on this. And so now we are working with them to develop the project. So yeah, we've really tried to leverage the existing bits. I will stop here. So we have we had 3 questions in the chat, one for Rashesh, so we will make sure that we will pass it to him and then get back to you, Lina. Then we had Mini, who said, beyond the private sector of taker-smallholder relationship discussion, there is a need to move into looking into the role of NGOs and government in operationalizing private sector investment in agri-food systems. I call it an honest broker role. It needs fleshing out in terms of what it entails. So that was one remark and question. And then we have a question from Hamed Lamin. What is your best experience to facilitate the respect of the protocol of collaboration between small producers and transformers, and also between transformers and industry? So to ensure that people work together and that they meet the criteria that were set at the beginning. Anyone wants to take the question?
It is a bit of a tough one.
And it's a bit of a pity because I think it has
Yes, correct. Although maybe not a bad question to direct to somebody who's been working in the field and who's done that, who's been in the day-to-day with smallholders, with other companies, etc. Wendy, would you venture to have a stab at an answer on that one?
Long one, I'm very sorry about this. What is your best experience to facilitate the respect of the protocol of collaboration between smallholder producers and, for instance, your company, to make sure that everyone delivers on what was agreed at the beginning?
Okay, my best experience, as CEO of Matomani, is To have a common goal, you know, what is it that you want to achieve, and that is beneficial to the two or the involved parties. So once you have that established and it's very clear in terms of that objective and the deliverables, and continuously checking in to say, are you getting closer to that particular goal? So that is the best answer that I can give you, continuous engagement, but it's very important to define that very well at the beginning.
Thank you very much. As the room is increasingly emptying out, and rightfully so, because we're 15 minutes over time, and I'm assuming many people have planned for their 3 p.m. slot. I want to say thank you to all the members of the audience, those that are still here. I will do a super accelerated recap. Perhaps to no one's surprise, we're concluding that the private sector and private sector engagement is essential for this, right? If only because the agri and food system globally consists of more than 90% of the private sector. To me, that's always been the data point that brings it all home. We've seen that practical models exist. We still have Antoine in the room. We have UCC and Marubeni there, both on the public and the private side. Great examples of where that model does exist, where models are being used and being implemented, right, between the public and the private sector. Wonderful examples of collaboration and cooperation, right? And finally, maybe a bit of a generic point, but there are challenges, right? And there will continue to be challenges. Rajesh told us about the short term and the long term, right? And in fact, some people like to see that as a contradiction or see it as we need to move to long term. Both of those have a role to play as well, right? Short term interests are a good way of bringing people together, right? And if you can then move them towards a long term growth oriented partnership, right, which is a lot of the work, if you think about it, that we do at IFAD as well, trying to get smallholders to and companies together in a long-term growth partnership, then hopefully we're doing the best we can, and we're creating these lasting, these sustainable changes for people. I'd like to thank most of the people that are no longer in the room, except for, fortunately, Wendy Vasella and Timbani. It's been wonderful having you. Thank you so much. The same, of course, goes for Rajesh and for Mr. Hari as well. Online, thank you so much, Antoine Bergerot. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Nakahira, Mr. Ichihara. Thank you very much for being here. It was great having you and listening to you live at a late hour in Japan. We're very well aware of that. Thank you so much for allowing and for allowing us the time with you today. It's been wonderful. And let me close off by saying, let's all continue to work very hard at forging these partnerships and bringing everybody together around the noble goal of transforming the food systems so that it works for everyone. Thank you very much.